So now we'll get into another show that has multiple versions. And I think there's other versions than these two, but we're just going to talk about these two. And this is Long Lost Family. So we have the TLC version and the BBC version. And we're going to talk about the BBC one first. For those unfamiliar with this show, Long Lost Family is a show dedicated to finding specific family members for people. So it's not really as much of a genealogy show of like building family tree as it is of like adoptees trying to find their family members or birth mothers trying to find the children they gave away, siblings trying to find, their siblings that they lost, or just, other relatives for whatever reason. Most of the time it was adoptee cases, whether it's the birth mom or the child looking for the parents, because there's a lot of both ways. But there were a few other sort of stories that were different ones as well. It is quite an intriguing show. They do present it in a very interesting way of, here's how we kind of took the steps in the research. Very simplified, which I understand, because that's kind of what I do with my YouTuber Family Tree series, is I try to show the genealogy, but simplifying it by, I'm not going to show you, okay, I went to this database and I searched this and I found this. It's, and then I found this and then I learned this from that, so it's like you're showing the steps, but you're not going in depth in every step. And I thought that was really, really great the way that they presented that. For me, as I'm thinking about this, I think I'm trying to decide whether it's going to be an A tier or an S tier, because it is a really, really good show. But at the same time, part of me feels like maybe it's not necessarily an S tier. But I can't really think of any good reasoning as to why it wouldn't necessarily be, other than, I guess, I'm always much more I'm much more like interested in watching Finding Your Roots or Who Do You Think You Are than episodes of Long Lost Family, but I still do really enjoy it. And I constantly will get inklings and like, oh, I'll watch some Long Lost Family. And, these are episodes where you can really cry a lot. And what I think with the BBC one, I'm going to put it in S tier, because I feel like it is one of those shows that just, it's also just so unique in what it does, and it especially handles things really well. And I think that's going to play into also how I rate the US version, which is very similar, based in the same way. Like Long Lost Family in the UK, there are two hosts, and then like each episode focus on two different guests, and the hosts seem to kind of like have a focused guest that they focus on, but then they like switch or something. I don't remember exactly, but I will say the US version is definitely 100% rated lower than the BBC version. And part of it has to do with it has a bit more of the fluff. I've always wondered if I'd ever say this publicly, but I guess this is the perfect place to say it. Actually, we're not. I don't even know if it's going to go there yet. But I constantly joke with my parents about this, that with some of these shows, they do what I like to call cry bitch cry, where it's just, they're just like, they're in the background like, yeah, cry bitch cry. And like I feel like that's the issue with the US version, is they're always like really trying to get them to cry. Like with the long lost BBC version, when they guess, or when the hosts talk to the guests, they seem very, worried about the guest reaction and just not overdoing it. And they're very empathetic and sympathetic to their guests. Whereas the US version, they're like, I don't remember the episode, but I remember there was one episode where it was like, almost like the guest was like, but doesn't that make you sad? They're like, well, I mean, I've gotten over it and this and that and blah, blah, blah. But aren't you, how does it make you feel thinking about when you were a little kid and this, and like, just like, it's like, cry, bitch, cry. And like, I don't know. I always think of that when I see these episodes sometimes from the US version, because It really is. But the thing that really sets it further down more than anything, which kind of goes off of that, is in the BBC version, when they find someone's deceased that they're looking for, they always say, out of respect, we told them off camera. The US version, they always tell them on camera, surprise them on camera to get that cry bitch cry reaction. And that, I think, is honestly doesn't even allow it to be an A tier. It pushes it down to B tier. Honestly, it could even push it down further. Granted, I think, the show does a lot of good, but I think that is one of the biggest things that, it's a lack of respect for the guests, just in the impetus of, that perfect moment, the viral clip sort of thing. Which, it's like, especially knowing the BBC version does take the steps to ensure respect in those measures. So yeah, I don't know if my parents are watching this, but if they are, they're probably laughing that I actually said the whole cry bitch cry thing publicly. But I don't know. It's just, yeah, yeah. So, all right. I see a bunch of people laughing about that. Yeah. Now I almost guarantee, I think that'll actually be kind of funny when a lot of you are watching a lot of these shows now where you do kind of have that, you're going to have that moment where you're going to think in the back of your mind, yeah, they're doing a cry bitch cry moment. They're really trying to pull those tears. I'm actually kind of almost crying, laughing about it right now.